The crowd's roars thundered through the vast Colosseum, shaking the blood-stained ground beneath Lian's bare feet. The air was thick with the acrid stench of burning metal and sweat, a sickening mixture that clung to the back of his throat. The chains around his wrists rattled as two towering Xha'zaari guards shoved him forward, their clawed hands digging into his thin arms. The boy stumbled but did not fall. He wouldn't give them that satisfaction. High above, beneath the glow of artificial suns, Commander Vor'ka observed from his throne-like seat. His armor gleamed, a deep obsidian laced with intricate crimson etchings, each marking a campaign of conquest. The warlord of Kortal leaned forward, his reptilian features twisting into a grin. A mere child, he mused, his voice a guttural rumble. How long will it last? Lian stood in the center of the pit, dwarfed by the towering metal gates before him. He could hear the low, vibrating hum of the force field keeping him trapped, its energy thrumming against his skin. Beyond the bars, something stirred, a massive shape shifting in the shadows. The Vor'ka, the executioner. A hush fell over the crowd as the gates groaned open. From the darkness, two glowing yellow eyes flickered to life. Then came the sound, deep, guttural breathing like the bellows of a forge. Clawed paws scraped against stone, and the beast emerged. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of any earth predator. Its fur was sleek black, rippling with unnatural musculature. Rows of jagged spines ran along its back, pulsing faintly with an eerie bioluminescence. Saliva dripped from its fanged maw, sizzling where it hit the ground. The crowd erupted in excitement. Lian did not move. The Vor'ka's eyes locked onto his, its ears twitching slightly. For a moment, neither of them moved, frozen in an eerie standoff. The beast's nostrils flared as it sniffed the air. Then it lunged. Gasps rang through the Colosseum as the beast closed the distance in an instant, its powerful legs propelling it forward. Lian did not scream. He did not run. His small frame barely even tensed. The Vor'ka skidded to a halt, inches away, hot breath washing over his face. Silence. The beast cocked its head, its lips peeling back slightly in something that was not quite a snarl. Its tail flicked once, twice. The muscles in its shoulders tensed. Then, impossibly, it hesitated. Confusion rippled through the audience. The Xha'zaari were predators, a species that lived for bloodshed, and their creations reflected their nature. The Vor'ka had never hesitated before. It had been bred for war, engineered for slaughter. Yet here it stood, still and watchful. Lian raised his hand, palm outward. His fingers trembled, but his eyes did not waver. The Vor'ka's ears flattened. It growled, a low, rumbling vibration that seemed to resonate in the very marrow of his bones. The beast took a step closer, and the entire Colosseum tensed. 1 breath. 2. Lian's fingers brushed against the creature's snout. The Colosseum erupted in chaos. Commander Vor'ka shot to his feet. Kill the beast. Now. The guards moved immediately, rifles snapping to their shoulders. A single plasma shot rang out. The Vor'ka reacted before Lian could even process the sound. In one fluid motion, the beast twisted, its claws raking through the air. The plasma bolt ricocheted off its reinforced hide, striking a Xha'zaari soldier in the chest. The alien collapsed, gurgling, a smoking hole where his sternum had been. The crowd's cheers turned to shrieks as the arena floor became a battlefield. The Vor'ka was no longer a mindless executioner. It was protecting the boy. Lian barely had time to react before the beast swept him behind its massive form. Another shot was fired. The Vor'ka moved again, faster than something its size should be able to. It launched itself upward, claws digging into the stone walls of the pit. With a snarl, it sprang into the stands, teeth sinking into the nearest. Guard's throat. Blood sprayed in an arc. Panic. The audience scrambled for the exits, but the Xha'zaari warlords were already shouting orders. Soldiers poured into the Colosseum, their armor clanking, weapons primed. They weren't just here to kill the beast anymore. They were here to kill the child. Lian felt something cold settle in his gut. His breath came in short bursts, his hands clenched into fists. He had spent months, years, trapped in their dungeons, watching as his people were dragged away one by one. His parents had died in this very arena. Now was their turn. The Vor'ka roared, a sound that shook the very walls. The remaining Xha'zaari hesitated. The beast leapt, moving like living shadow, weaving through the chaos with terrifying precision. It was no longer just an animal. It was a predator unleashed. Lian felt the bond before he understood it. It was a whisper in the back of his mind, an echo of something old and powerful. The Vor'ka wasn't acting randomly. It was moving with him. A voice, no, not a voice, but a sensation. A single, instinctual command. Run. Lian didn't question it. He moved. He darted between fallen bodies, ducking low as plasma, fire streaked overhead. The Vor'ka followed, guarding his flank, its growls a constant rhythm in the chaos. The Colosseum's exit loomed ahead, but it was closing, thick metal doors grinding together. They wouldn't make it. The Vor'ka made a sudden noise, a sharp, guttural bark. Lian's heart slammed against his ribs. He understood. Trust. The beast lunged forward, snatching Lian in its jaws with terrifying precision. Before he could react, it coiled its muscles and leapt. The force of the jump stole Lian's breath. They soared over the closing gates, over the guards scrambling below. Then they were crashing down, rolling onto solid ground beyond the arena. Lian gasped, coughing as he tried to push himself up. The Vor'ka stood protectively over him, its chest heaving, its fur streaked with blood, not its own. From behind them, the sounds of battle raged on. But ahead, there was open sky. A chance. The beast nudged him, urging him forward. Lian swallowed hard, nodding. They ran. Lian's breath burned in his throat as he ran, his bare feet slapping against the rough metallic pathways of Kortal's lower levels. The Vor'ka moved beside him in perfect sync, its massive frame weaving through the shadows, muscles coiled and ready to strike. Behind them, alarms howled through the alien city, their sharp, pulsating rhythm a constant reminder that the Xha'zaari were closing in. They wouldn't stop hunting him. The Vor'ka's presence was both reassuring and terrifying. Even now, the beast's golden eyes flicked constantly toward him, as though gauging his every move. Lian didn't fully understand their connection, but he didn't need to. It was there, unspoken, a thread of instinct that bound them together. The streets of Kortal were a labyrinth of jagged structures, twisting alleys, and elevated walkways. High above, the sky pulsed with artificial light, the towering spires casting long, jagged shadows. The city was alive with the hum of alien machinery and the distant roar of transport ships. Lian forced his aching legs to move faster. His mind raced. There had to be a way out, some crack in the fortress-like city where a human and a rogue war beast could disappear. But the Xha'zaari had built this place to trap their enemies, not let them escape. A sudden burst of movement. From the rooftops, dark figures dropped down, their forms sleek and predatory. Xha'zaari hunters. Their curved blades glinted in the neon light, their eyes locking onto Lian with an unsettling hunger. The first one lunged. The Vor'ka reacted in a blur. One moment it was at Lian's side. The next, it was airborne, intercepting the hunter mid-strike. The alien barely had time to scream before the beast's fangs clamped around his throat. The body hit the ground in a twitching heap. Lian didn't stop. He couldn't. A second hunter closed in, moving with inhuman speed. Lian ducked as the blade whistled past his ear. He twisted, grabbing a loose scrap of metal from the ground and swinging it wildly. It connected with a dull crack against the alien's arm. The hunter hissed, recoiling. The Vor'ka didn't give him a second chance. With a powerful swipe, its claws tore through armor and bone. Another body fell, but more were coming. Lian's pulse pounded. They couldn't keep fighting. Not like this. The Vor'ka was fast, deadly, but it wasn't invincible. And he was just a child. If they were cornered, it would end the same way it had for his parents. He spotted a service hatch ahead, half hidden behind a pile of discarded machinery. Without hesitation, he sprinted toward it, skidding to his knees as he yanked it open. "In," he whispered, urgency lacing his voice. The Vor'ka hesitated for the first time. It didn't fit easily into small spaces. Its entire design was built for open combat. But Lian didn't give a choice. He pressed a trembling hand against the beast's shoulder, that strange thread of connection tightening between them. "Trust me." The Vor'ka let out a low, reluctant growl, then squeezed itself into the tunnel. Lian followed, pulling the hatch closed just as the remaining hunters rounded the corner. He held his breath, pressing himself against the damp, rusted walls. Through the thin metal, he could hear the hunters snarling in their guttural language. They didn't know where he had gone, yet. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then the footsteps faded. Lian exhaled, his entire body trembling. They had a few minutes at best. The tunnel was damp and reeked of rotting metal. It sloped downward into darkness, the air thick with an oily heat. Lian crawled forward cautiously, feeling his way through the winding passage. Behind him, the Vor'ka moved in eerie silence, its breath warm against his back. They emerged into a vast underground sector, an old maintenance bay, abandoned and rusting. Stacks of broken machinery lined the walls, half-dismantled transport pods strewn across the floor like forgotten corpses. Faint blue emergency lights flickered overhead, casting ghostly shadows. Lian slumped against a crate, rubbing at his burning arms. His body ached, but he couldn't stop moving. He turned to the Vor'ka, watching as it paced, ears flicking at every distant noise. "What are you?" Lian murmured, more to himself than the beast. The Vor'ka stopped. Its golden eyes met his, intelligent and searching. A memory surfaced, a whisper of something long buried. Lian's mother, her hands gentle as she adjusted the sensors around his head. His father's voice, low but filled with urgency. He doesn't need to control it. He just needs to exist with it. They had never been trying to tame the Vor'ka. They had been creating a bond, one that no Xha'zaari had ever considered possible. Lian swallowed hard. His parents had died for this. A sharp clanking noise echoed from above. He tensed. The hunters were still searching. They wouldn't stop until he was dead. His fingers curled into fists. He wasn't going to let that happen. Lian moved toward one of the damaged transport pods, peering inside. The interface was shattered, its power source long drained. But the old engine casing was intact, and large enough to hide in. A plan formed. He turned to the Vor'ka. "We can't outrun them forever," he whispered. "But we don't have to." The Vor'ka's ears twitched. Lian worked quickly. He pulled at the exposed wiring, his small fingers nimble despite the sweat slicking his skin. His father had taught him about old tech, how to rig circuits, how to make something seem operational even when it wasn't. It took only minutes to complete his work. Then he turned to the Vor'ka and exhaled slowly. "Trust me," he murmured again. The beast hesitated only a second before obeying. It climbed inside the engine casing, its massive form folding impossibly small. Lian worked fast, sealing the hatch just as voices echoed down the tunnel. Then he curled himself into the shadows, pressing his body behind a rusted console. The Xha'zaari entered cautiously, their weapons raised. Their reptilian eyes swept the room, scanning for movement. One of them barked orders, and two soldiers began searching the area, overturning debris. Lian forced himself to remain still. Seconds dragged. Then one of the hunters spotted the transport pod. He growled something in his native tongue, motioning for the others. They surrounded the pod, their weapons humming to life. One of them slammed a clawed hand against the casing. A faint, mechanical whir filled the air. Lian's trick was working. The interface he'd rigged was playing a low-power startup sequence, making it seem as though the pod was about to take off. The Xha'zaari hesitated. If the pod was powering up, someone had to be inside. But they didn't dare fire on it. Not yet. One of them stepped forward cautiously, reaching for the access panel. Lian's heart pounded. The Vor'ka moved. The hatch exploded outward, and the beast was everywhere at once. Claws tore through armor. Snarls and screams filled the air. Blood sprayed across the rusted floor. Lian launched forward, grabbing a fallen blade. The last Xha'zaari turned, his eyes widening in shock as Lian drove the weapon upward, straight through his throat. Silence fell. Lian stood over the bodies, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The Vor'ka stood beside him, blood dripping from its fangs. They had won, but the fight wasn't over. Lian wiped his hands on his tattered clothes and looked toward the distant tunnels. It was time to stop running. Lian pressed his back against the cold metal wall, heart hammering as the weight of their next step settled over him. He and the Vor'ka had evaded the hunters, but not for long. The Xha'zaari didn't tolerate defiance, and they would never allow their prized war beast to escape with a human child. This was no longer just a hunt. It was a matter of dominance, a spectacle, a lesson. He exhaled slowly, his fingers tightening around the curved Xha'zaari blade he had taken from the dead hunter. It felt alien in his grip, too heavy, too unbalanced. But it was all he had. The Vor'ka shifted beside him, its black fur rippling as it prowled through the dimly lit tunnel. Its golden eyes met his, the unspoken question lingering between them. Lian nodded. Forward. They moved through the underground sector, their footsteps silent against the rusted floor. Pipes hissed, venting steam into the stale air. The corridors were old, remnants of an earlier era before the Xha'zaari transformed Kortal into their fortress world. If Lian had any hope of escaping, it would be through these forgotten pathways. But he wasn't just escaping anymore. The memories of the arena still burned fresh in his mind. His parents had fought for something. For knowledge, for understanding, for a future where humans weren't just prey in the Xha'zaari's endless games. They had died believing that the Vor'ka wasn't just a weapon. That could be more. And now, against all odds, Lian had proven them right. A distant clang echoed from above. He froze. The Vor'ka's ears flicked back, its muscles coiling. They had found them. A deep vibration pulsed through the walls, followed by a voice amplified through the city's broadcast system. Human child, you will not leave this place. Vor'ka. Lian clenched his teeth. The warlord's voice was calm, steady, but laced with quiet menace. Your escape was amusing. The beast's disobedience, unexpected. But this is over now. Surrender, and your death will be swift. Lian exhaled. His hands trembled slightly, but not with fear. With fury. Or, Vor'ka continued, his tone turning almost amused. You can keep running. We enjoy the chase. A sharp hiss of hydraulics signaled something far worse than hunters. Lian turned, his stomach twisting as a large section of the tunnel's walls peeled back. No, not walls. Doors. Massive, reinforced containment units slid open, and from the darkness, they emerged. Not Xha'zaari. Not soldiers. Vor'ka. Lian's breath hitched as 5 of them stepped into the dim light, their spines crackling with bioluminescent pulses. Their claws scraped against the ground, their eyes glowing with the same golden fire as his Vor'ka. But unlike his, there was no hesitation in their movements. No flicker of intelligence beyond the raw, primal drive to hunt. They weren't free. They were controlled. Vor'ka had unleashed them against him. Lian barely had time to react before the lead Vor'ka let out a guttural snarl and charged. His Vor'ka leapt to intercept, their bodies colliding in a tangle of teeth and claws. A deep, Ear-rattling boom filled the air as the force of their impact cracked the tunnel floor. Lian turned and ran. He dodged left, narrowly avoiding the swipe of another Vor'ka's claws as it tore through a rusted support beam like paper. The tunnel wasn't built for this. If they kept fighting here, the entire structure would collapse. He needed higher ground, a vantage point. Scrambling forward, Lian spotted an old maintenance ladder leading up toward the industrial scaffolding above. He launched himself at it, climbing fast. Below, his Vor'ka twisted, using the narrow corridor to its advantage. It struck hard and fast, weaving between its opponents in a blur of motion. But it was outnumbered, overwhelmed. Lian's chest tightened. He had to even the odds. Reaching the upper platform, he scanned his surroundings. The old power conduits still hummed with residual energy. Exposed coolant pipes ran along the walls, their surfaces slick with frost. He narrowed his eyes, his mind working fast. The Xha'zaari thought he was just prey, just a weak, desperate child trying to survive. They had no idea he had been studying their technology for years. Lian gritted his teeth and yanked a loose panel from the walkway, exposing a mess of tangled wires. His fingers flew, rerouting circuits, feeding power to the nearest active grid. Below, sparks flared as dormant machinery stirred to life. The lead Vor'ka lunged for his companion's throat, and Lian activated the override. The coolant pipes ruptured. A deafening hiss filled the air as sub-zero mist blasted from the ruptured lines. The nearest Vor'ka howled as it was caught in the icy spray, its movements slowing, frost creeping over its black hide. The others hesitated, their predatory instincts momentarily disrupted. His Vor'ka seized the opportunity. With a furious snarl, it tore into its frozen opponent, massive jaws clamping down with bone-crushing force. A sickening crack echoed through the tunnel as the creature collapsed, its spine shattered. One down. Lian didn't wait. He scrambled across the platform, kicking loose another valve. This time, a cascade of high-voltage energy surged through the remaining exposed conduits. The floor below lit up in a web of crackling blue light. Electricity snapped through the confined space, arcing between metal beams and grounded structures. One of the Vor'ka howled as it stepped too close, its body convulsing violently before slumping into a smoking heap. Two down, but the remaining three had learned. They circled back, their movements more measured, smarter. They weren't just killers. They were adapting. Lian's pulse pounded. He was running out of tricks and time. Then, suddenly, his Vor'ka was beside him. It had broken free, streaked with blood, but very much alive. It leapt onto the scaffolding, muscles bunching, golden eyes locking onto Lian's. He didn't need words. He understood. Lian turned and ran toward the edge of the platform. Below was a sheer drop into one of Kortal's industrial waste chutes. The abyss yawned beneath him, filled with a swirling, toxic fog that burned his eyes. It was a death sentence, or an escape route. The Vor'ka's breath was hot against his back. He didn't stop, didn't hesitate. Then, with one final push, they leapt together. The world vanished into freefall. Lian felt the rush of air tear past his skin, the pull of gravity wrenching his stomach. His Vor'ka twisted midair, wrapping its massive body around him in a protective spiral as they plummeted toward the unknown. Above them, the remaining Vor'ka stood at the ledge, staring down, waiting. Lian didn't know what was below, but one thing was certain. VA Rock had underestimated them, and that was his first mistake. Lian hit the ground hard, rolling instinctively to absorb the impact as the Vor'ka landed beside him with a heavy thud. The thick, acrid mist of the industrial waste chute burned his throat, but he pushed forward, scrambling to his feet. Above them, distant roars echoed through the chasm. The remaining Vor'ka weren't following. Not yet. The drop had bought them time, but not safety. Lian scanned his surroundings. They had landed in a vast underground expanse, littered with remnants of discarded machinery and half-destroyed conduits. Pale blue emergency lights flickered along the walls, casting eerie shadows across the debris-strewn floor. The air hummed with the distant sound of massive generators, still churning despite decades of neglect. His Vor'ka sniffed the air, ears flicking. It was tense, muscles coiled. Lian followed its gaze and saw the corridor ahead, a rusted transport tunnel leading deeper into the underbelly of Kortal. If they could navigate it, they might find a way back to the surface. But they weren't alone down here. A faint metallic click echoed through the cavernous space. Lian barely had time to react before a streak of energy shot past his head, scorching the air. He dove behind a fallen support beam, heart hammering. A voice followed. Cold, calculated, impressive. But the game is over. Lian gritted his teeth. Xha'zaari, the warlord, emerged from the shadows, his armored form moving with slow, deliberate confidence. His crimson cloak barely stirred as he advanced, plasma rifle in one hand, a curved execution blade in the other. His deep-set black eyes locked onto Lian with something bordering on amusement. You've given us quite the spectacle, human. A defiant child, taming a war beast. It was almost inspiring. Almost. Lian stayed silent, forcing himself to think. Xha'zaari wasn't here alone. The Xha'zaari never hunted without backup. A low snarl confirmed it. From the far side of the tunnel, two more Vor'ka slinked into view. Unlike Lian's companion, these creatures were still bound to the Xha'zaari's will, obedient, merciless, bred for slaughter. The warlord tilted his head. You misunderstand your place, child. You and that creature are nothing more than anomalies. Glitches in a system older than your entire race. And do you know what we do to glitches? Lian tightened his grip on the stolen Xha'zaari blade. His mind raced through possibilities. Fighting Xha'zaari head-on was suicide. The Vor'ka at his side was powerful, but wounded. And the two others? Faster, uncompromising. He needed an advantage. His eyes flicked to the exposed conduits overhead, corroded but still pulsing with latent energy. The remnants of old security systems ran through them. He made his choice. Lian lunged, not at Vor'ka, but at the control panel behind him. His fingers slammed against the exposed circuits, tearing out wires, redirecting currents. Xha'zaari's eyes narrowed. A child playing with machines? Desperate. The warlord raised his rifle. Lian yanked down the final lever. The cavern exploded with motion. Emergency override systems kicked in, ancient defense turrets sputtering to life. The first blast caught one of the Xha'zaari-controlled Vor'ka off guard, slamming it into a wall with enough force to send cracks through the duracrete. The second shot struck the warlord's shoulder, searing armor, forcing him back. Lian's Vor'ka leapt, claws outstretched. It collided with the second enemy beast, teeth snapping onto its throat. A brutal struggle erupted, a tangle of fur and fangs. Xha'zaari recovered fast. With a snarl, he threw his rifle aside, drawing his curved blade. His movements were fluid, deadly. He was a warrior of a species bred for war. He closed the distance between them in seconds. Lian barely dodged the first strike, the blade slicing the air where his head had been. He countered with a wild swing of his stolen weapon, but Xha'zaari sidestepped, driving an elbow into Lian's ribs. Pain flared. Lian staggered but didn't fall. He couldn't. Xha'zaari's expression darkened. Foolish. I expected more. The warlord lunged, blade descending. Lian moved instinctively. Low. Precise. Instead of retreating, he stepped in, bringing his smaller frame inside Xha'zaari's guard. The warlord hadn't expected it. His blade nicked Lian's shoulder, but Lian's own stolen dagger drove upward, straight into the gap beneath Xha'zaari's armor. The Xha'zaari Warlord's eyes widened. For the first time, he looked surprised. Lian twisted the blade. Vor'ka staggered back, crimson blood spilling from a wound. He let out a rattling breath, struggling to stand. Lian wasted no time. He turned toward his Vor'ka. It was still locked in combat with the last enemy beast, both creatures battered, bloodied. Lian acted. With a sharp whistle, he called his Vor'ka's name. Not a command, but a signal. The creature responded instantly, breaking away, leaping toward Lian as he activated the final override. The ceiling shuddered. Massive containment doors slammed shut, trapping the remaining Vor'ka behind them. Silence. Lian exhaled, chest rising and falling in ragged breaths. Vor'ka knelt on one knee, his own blood pooling beneath him. His gaze, once filled with unshakable certainty, now held something else. Recognition. You, the warlord coughed, struggling to speak. You are more than I thought. Lian met his gaze, gripping his blade tighter. I was never what you thought. The warlord let out a final breath and collapsed. Lian didn't stay to watch him die. He turned to his Vor'ka, pressing a hand against its blood-matted fur. The creature nudged him, golden eyes gleaming with silent understanding. They had won, together. But this wasn't the end. Lian looked toward the distant tunnel. The surface awaited, a world beyond the Xha'zaari's grip. And for the first time, he wasn't just running. He was taking back his future.